the majority of crypto products that actually like have longevity and make it is like they reward you kind of in one way or the other.
It's what crypto is all about, right?
Yeah,
giving users ownership. That is the main thing that crypto, I think, does for the world.
You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something.
How did you end up on Farcaster?
I worked with Dan and Varun at Coinbase. So that was kind of how I knew them well before Farcaster, and I always thought Dan in particular would be the most successful person at Coinbase post Coinbase. Actually, like I said,
why is that? That's interesting.
Just a feeling. I don't know. I'm like a gut feeling person, and that was the feeling I had. So, so yeah. And then when he launched it, he reached out, and I got on it pretty early and liked it as a user, and then invested, and that was how I got started.
Did he personally onboard you?
Yeah.
Oh. Both Johnny and I didn't get the personal onboarding, so.
We came later.
Did you know him before?
No.
So
no.
That's
okay.
Why. Yeah. What made you like it when you first used it? I know that the very early product was, had none of the features that it has today, right? Like it didn't have channels, it didn't have all these things. So like, what made you see it and think there's something here and I want to invest in this company and I really believe in what they're building?
I think, decentralized social has always been promising, right? I think most people in the world now understand how much power centralized social networks have and how that can be very bad in a whole bunch of ways, right? So I've kind of always been, excited about decentralized social. So I think it's my excitement about decentralized social combined with just my excitement about Dan and Varun. That was really what kind of brought me in initially, and that's what caused me to start investing time and posting and and later investing. So it was more. I would say it wasn't anything specific about the product really until recently, but it was more just kind of a bet of time and money on kind of the long-term vision of decentralized social and Dan and Varun and the team.
You were actually you were Farcaster culture carrier and trendsetter when you started screenshot essays, which I don't think you initially called screenshot essays, but everyone else just like took that name and ran with it. But can you talk a little bit more about like that early experiment that you were doing? Because I don't know if a lot of people who are newer to the network like understand, I don't know, some of those like Farcaster lore moments where like there was only however many hundred of us on the platform and you kind of just started this whole cultural movement in a way.
Yeah, that was cool. I don't think it was a very big cultural movement, but it was cool. And there were a number of people that started posting, which is cool. I actually haven't done it in a while. I want to again though, so I probably will. But basically, I think we all know on Twitter the thread boys and these long Twitter threads and stuff that are sometimes not great. It was basically, I wanted to try something different and new, on this new medium. And I think it was the month in like August 2022. For that whole month, I decided to just do one every day. So I did one every single day in August 22 as just kind of an experiment. And yeah, it was fun. Some people liked them and some people started doing it as well. So
I think I remember someone saying like, why not just support longer form text? It's kind of silly that it's just a picture of text and not the actual text. And I remember Dan saying like, no, it's actually this really information dense thumbnail because you can see roughly how much reading you're going to have to do before you click on it. And so you can kind of make this quick decision. Do I even want to click on this? Do I even care? And I was like, dang, that's like really smart. That's like an astute observation. And I think that might be one of the reasons why people started doing it, because it's not this sort of endless thread or just this like super long thing that you don't really know what you're getting into. You can kind of quickly preview it. So I remember someone too also joking, like, we need to build a screenshot essay client, which I actually still think would be kind of cool.
Yeah. Is anyone doing them lately?
I did one recently, and I've seen other people do them too. And I've actually given Colin from Paragraph feedback too, of like, oh, I like the read inline frames from Paragraph, but I was like, the best thing about a screenshot essay is that you immediately knew how long it was. And right now when you see a frame, that like you don't know how long that person's blog post is. So I was like, oh, you need to like look at like why screenshot essays like worked so well. So
yeah, that's true. I might, what month? Next month, maybe I'll try one a day for that whole month. See if it comes back.
I mean, I saved some of them. Yeah. I think your first one also like might have been on a very controversial person.
Yeah.
I forgot. It had caught my attention though, because I was like, wait, what? Like also because at the time a lot of Farcaster was crypto content too. And you really also started sharing like thoughts on just like general trends and general thinking.
So yeah, it's cool. It's fun to do that. So I'm definitely gonna do it again. I'm glad you guys reminded me.
Yay! I'm happy. Good for everyone.
We were talking a little bit about protocol diversity and network growth, and I'm curious to hear from your perspective, like, you know, what do you think will cause like a huge 10x in QDAO at the network level, not necessarily the Warpcast level? Like, what, in other words, what gets the Farcaster network, like to the next level?
I think it's likely Warpcast that basically continues to, provide a good or improves the onboarding experience for new users. I still think there's like a bunch of things that Warpcast can do. We talked about this earlier. Like one of the things I love is, in-feed minting, right?
Yeah.
Minting, one-click minting with warps. And that's the type of thing that could onboard, hundreds of millions of users to NFTs. But right now, you still have to have crypto to even buy warps because of the Coinbase Commerce integration. So I feel like a simple thing like making it easy to buy warps with Apple Pay, or with a credit card, could be a huge on-ramp to lots more usage. So I think it's going to happen. I'm not sure why it hasn't yet, to be honest, but that's kind of, I think we've seen it. I think up until maybe a year ago, the core team was kind of wanted to have a whole bunch of developers build on it and stuff like that. And I think there's still that hope, but you need to focus on something. And I think focusing on just building a great, UX and a great client is probably the best thing that they could do. And they did it. And that's why now, there's a lot more people on it. So I think, for the next couple of years, I hope there's lots of other stuff, and there probably, will be some interesting stuff, but probably the biggest accelerant to usage will be just improvements in the Warpcast UX, if I had to guess. But what do you guys think?
I agree. I think it's I think anybody also building a client on top of Farcaster also agrees. And I think Waj has taken a smart perspective to be like, I'm pretty much just going to build a client for super users, knowing that Warpcast is just going to focus on getting kind of like the next million to be using Warpcast. And I think a lot of the other side, anything that's built on top of it will have to be niche by nature. Like it's not gonna. That's my take on it. It's like everything has to be niche.
What Supercast has done too, because I mean, I think, what does he charge, $100 a month or something?
I think a year.
Oh, is it a year?
Or,
Okay.
I don't know what, but
I was like, whoa, we got to talk about his pricing model. That's true.
But it is, I think it's a significant amount of money, and you could build a good, solid business. I don't know if he wants to build, maybe he doesn't want to build a, multi-billion-dollar venture-backed business, but you could build a solid business that way. And he's probably, he might be close to profitable now.
So I think that's exactly what he's trying to do, is like basically build like a bootstrap business. And I think it's going well. I think, it's a little bit of a awkward relationship between clients that are doing something maybe adjacent to Warpcast. Because I think that if like Warpcast has the distribution, I think the most of the usage that's happening on the network is happening via Warpcast. And I think that, if the team were to see someone who built a feature that was, say, similar that they could integrate, they probably would. And so there's this somewhat competitive, I think, relationship that anyone who's doing something approximately like Warpcast is inevitably going to enter into with them. I actually think that what's going to be the thing that takes them to like the next level is someone coming in who doesn't care about the team. They don't care about Warpcast. They're totally indifferent. They're dispassionate. The reason why they build on Farcaster is because of the social graph, and that you get that for free from day one. And I think that so I think that's likely to be the profile of the builder who like ends up building something super novel. And I think that the client will probably be totally orthogonal to Warpcast. Like it probably won't have a feed. It probably won't be text-based. It'll be like it'll be just like categorically different. And I think that thing would need to get like dominant usage. So in some ways it's like, you could look at like,
dominant and sustainable too. Like I think we've seen a lot of,
like it needs to have its own business, but it's like the thing that disrupted like Instagram, or you could say disrupted, but like the thing that came along and gave them a run for their money was not like an Instagram clone. It was Snapchat. And Snapchat was like different in all these really important, like, category different ways. And I think like probably something similar like that is going to have to come along for the network to see a really big step change in the number of FIDs, the number of like casts, all the kind of like main network usage pieces. That's kind of my thinking,
Yeah. I still think it'll be Warpcast that onboards. Like I still think it might be a little bit far off until someone has something like that. But that's just one thing.
So
Nick,
I think Dracula is it.
I think it could be like a good example of something that's that different. Sorry, go ahead, Ted.
No, I was going to agree. I was like, I think Dracula could be it. I think it'll come down to execution. Because when I think about TikTok, like there's no actual social graph of TikTok. Like TikTok's actually the one social media app, I think, where you don't have to add any of your friends. Like you get good content and they have like hyper growth without actually needing any of your friends on the app to enjoy the app, even though it's a social app. And you can't say that about Instagram. You can't really say that. I mean, now you can with Reels, but you couldn't have said that about any early social networking or social media apps. Like it was all rooted in your social graph and your social network. And then TikTok came out and like, it didn't matter. So
are there really cool, like Dracula? I mean, it's only a week into Dracula, but kind of Dracula native creators that
Ted. You're talking to one. Just kidding.
You, I think, are the kind of quintessential Farcaster native creator, right? Or Warpcast. We were actually just talking to someone that has like a huge Instagram following and is interested in Warpcast, and is like, we told her, you should check out Ted, right? Because I think you're a good example of like someone that has built a big following doing kind of Farcaster native content. So I guess you're also doing it on Dracula.
I think Alex, it's interesting. So Alex had reached out because he was like, are there any like on-chain creators who do videos? Because he needed kind of like the whole liquidity issue with a new app is like, oh, people need to see content. And I had made a bunch of TikTok videos. So he reached out being like, can we just like pretty much download and upload all of your TikTok videos so that there's something to watch on the feed when we launch? And I was like, yes, but only if you add sign in with Farcaster. Like, you should be building this whole thing on top of Farcaster, but like, I'll let you use my videos if we do sign in with Farcaster. So he said, okay, great, we'll look into it. I was like, it's pretty straightforward. And I think so I got really lucky actually, because he was like, we'll give you blood, but blood doesn't mean anything. But now, as a result of the transaction fees that I've earned from people like buying and selling my creator token, I've earned like 10x, maybe not 10x, like 7x on Dracula than what I've earned on TikTok to date. So
nice. That's amazing.
Yeah, cool.
Well, I guess one thing that you said there was it wasn't. It sounds like it wasn't Dracula native content in the sense that it was just recycled content from your Snapchat.
From TikTok. So you can like download the video and then upload it. But now I've had videos where Dracula doesn't have any like in-app. Like, the best thing about TikTok is you can record the video in TikTok, cut the video, edit the video in TikTok, and upload it all in one platform. And Dracula is not there yet. You can only upload.
Okay. But do you post the same stuff?
I just posted, yes, I have. I've started posting. I actually casted about like, oh, here are the stats across TikTok, Twitter, and Dracula for the same exact video.
Okay. What do you guys think about like posting the same stuff on Twitter and Farcaster?
I don't think it works.
Yeah.
I think that like every social network has its own native format and content that it wants.
Right.
And even though I think like Twitter and Warpcast seem really similar, I actually think they have very different cultures. And so like one of the things I always kind of chuckle at is when you see someone from Twitter and they write like a threaded like post on Warpcast and it gets like 0 engagement.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a good example of something. Yeah. The inverse
well,
is also
kind of what I'm alluding to, though. It sounds like, again, it might be early in Dracula, but to me, it's like if it's just recycled content from TikTok, it's not really kind of Dracula native.
Yeah.
So it is like, the other thing is that when I post TikTok, like if I post like a pop culture or beauty TikTok, it would like blow up on TikTok, flop on Twitter. But if I posted a tech-oriented video on TikTok, it would flop, but on Twitter, it would like take off. And so I think again, there will be like Dracula native content. I don't know what that content is. I've even been thinking about it and I'm like, wait, like who is the audience here? I think also because there's the blood, like, I don't know how many people are like true watching it versus like airdrop farmers, like for lack of a better term either, which makes it really hard as a creator to then like know what type of content I should be putting out, if that makes sense. Like Twitter's easier because you're, what are you gonna say?
Someone we were with this weekend was saying the same thing about Lens compared to Warpcast. I haven't really used Lens at all. I don't know if you guys have, but it sounds like there's a lot of kind of inorganic engagement, basically. Which it's interesting because I think there is some of that on Warpcast too, but it's around like different tokens, like degen, but it's not native to the protocol itself. I don't really see it. So if you're posting in the degen channel, maybe you'll get some of that inorganic engagement. But if you're just posting on your regular feed, there doesn't seem to be.
This is why, again, I can't get through an episode without being like talking about channels and being bullish about channels, because I think that channels create this kind of like cultural blast zone wherein you can have something like Ted's channel, which is, extremely thoughtful and sometimes controversial questions, discussions, right? And then you can also have like a meme coin channel, which is just all like, it's like smooth brain, number go up. And both of those two things can exist within the same protocol because you have these dividing lines. You have these kind of boundaries. Those boundaries are porous, you can pretty easily move between them, but there's still these categories. And I think that's like a superpower of the protocol, which is why, to your point, like there's some of that, but I don't think that characterizes the network as a whole.
Right.
Shifting gears a little bit.
I want to talk about DGen so bad. I want to hear, because you mentioned DGen, but we can put a pin in that until later if you have another question. But I was like, we kind of talked about it with Dracula.
We'll finish with that. I wanted to, since this is our inaugural OG episode where we're trying to capture Farcaster lore, I want to ask Nick about, what do you remember from the early days of Farcaster? Ted and I have talked about like how you couldn't delete casts, how you'd have like P marca, in your replies. Like there's all these kind of funny, quirky moments that we can speak to, but I'm curious, like, what do you remember from 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Like what sticks out?
That's a good question. I mean, the main thing I remember and what made me, in addition to just being bullish on decentralized social and liking Dan and Varun, what made me spend time there early was there was like really interesting people that I had never heard of before and didn't know that were just posting stuff that I found interesting. Mm-hmm. And that was a very distinct experience than Twitter, mm-hmm. right? Which is just kind of feels like a feed where people are, promoting themselves, promoting whatever they're involved in without, and you have the algorithm kind of, surfacing these people that you've heard of, and it's really hard to see, some interesting random person that you've never heard of, right? So that's at a high level, and there are a few. I'm blanking on some names right now, but there's a few that I still follow that I really get valuable information that I don't even really think about their name even. It's just kind of the content that they're posting, right?
Why do you think that was the case so early on?
I think because Dan hustled the way he kind of built the early community. I mean, he was talking to everyone. He was trying to bring some of these interesting people in and put them on the the follow list or whatever, and kind of he did a good job surfacing these people and making them get some attention within the app.
Yeah, my joke is in the Romergo rhythm we trust, mm-hmm. which is like the reason why early Farcaster was the way as you described is because Dan was curating. He was this kind of like gatekeeper, and I think he was like, okay, this person seems cool. Mm-hmm. And so I think that the early vibe and the energy and the interactions, it was like a really well curated dinner party where all the guests were really cool and no one knew each other.
Right. And I think there was some like self-selection. I've actually thought about this a lot, even recently within like my own venture firm and, how we invest, how we build a brand and things like that. It's like, we haven't tried to be this big brand. We have a defined way we do things. We've done well. And I think, the people that, that we want to work with kind of recognize that and self-select. Mm-hmm. And when you don't have this big marketing campaign or big brand, there's benefits from the big brand, right? You get a whole bunch of people, but a lot of it, is garbage. Mm-hmm. And Dan and Farcaster early on, they were pretty quiet in mm-hmm. how they were, building this community, right? They weren't announcing a massive fundraise and trying to, get all this attention and get all these people in. It was kind of like self-selection. The people that kind of, you wanted to join would join, but it wasn't, you weren't trying to acquire, mm-hmm. a million users from jump. And I think that kind of self-selection is, fostered a pretty quality community early on.
Yeah, like for the longest time, it would be like a tweet that he made, and then he'd be like, DM me. Mm-hmm. Like the way, I mean, I even had friends that I'd tell about Warpcast and like, or Farcaster as it was at the time, and they'd say, this sounds cool. How do I do it? And I'd be like, well, you have to send this guy a DM on Twitter, you know, like that's how. So it was like, what's interesting about that is it's like, it's a pull model, not a push model. It's like, you come to me and then I'll decide, as opposed to if you were to say, look at something like Lens or any number of big projects, which is like, it's very much this big top down, like push, let's cast this wide net and get anybody we can. I agree. I agree with what you're saying. And I also remember there being, I don't know, maybe criticisms or people saying to Dan, like, I remember someone made a dashboard basically comparing Farcaster growth to Lens growth.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And at the time, Lens had was just dominant.
Yeah.
And those numbers switched in terms of daily active usage. And I remember like Dan being very intentional about building slow and steady, very, you know, durable kind of daily user behavior, building a really good culture, and it paid off.
Yeah,
you know, but it was definitely like a long game because there were plenty of people at the time who were like, you need to open this thing up, make it permissionless right away, and then just, you know, go big
for sure
from day one. And I think like it takes a lot of, it's like, you know, it takes a lot of conviction and discipline to be like, no, I'm gonna slow grow it.
Those happen to be that's the way to win really big in crypto, I think. I mean, Coinbase is a good example of this too, where like, you know, you have companies like Binance and FTX popping up that you know, are getting a lot of attention, and you know, there's a lot of people. Even when Binance emerged in like 2017, there were a lot of people, you know, oh, why isn't Coinbase doing this? Why isn't Coinbase doing that? And there were
I remember
there were long-term reasons, and that's, you know, paid off. So I do think the long-term approach, it's can be hard, you know, in bull markets, particularly when these other, you know, projects pump up. But a long-term perspective, I think, you know, tends to win big in crypto.
Yeah, I think that's right. I remember for the longest time, Coinbase was Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. Meanwhile, there's exchanges that were listing basically anything. And everyone was saying Coinbase is getting left behind, blah, blah, blah. And now many of the founders of those exchanges are in prison.
Yeah.
And Coinbase is like crushing it.
Yeah.
So I think that's right. I think the long game is the way to go. All right. Ted, do you want to tee up some of the degen?
We can do degen, but also I know that when we asked Nick, when we asked you originally, like what kept you, what was like interesting, you're like, oh, it was actually like the app itself, like wasn't that, there was nothing sticky about the app other than the people until recently. And I was curious, were you referring to frames? Were you referring to degen? Were you referring to the mint feeds, or like, yeah, kind of like what are the features right now that like gets you really excited about the future that are, let's say, came out in the past 6 months?
I think you know, the financial activity, right? So I think it's it's you know, a combination of being able to make money with mints and in-feed mints, and I've been like, you know, how I like to use products, how I like to invest is to experiment with the products that I invest in. So like I did a experiment that I wasn't expecting to do much, but we did an in-frame mint
Yes.
for 24 hours that had like 12,000 mints. And that, you know, that was kind of an eye-opening moment. It's like, wow, there's a lot of interest here in like, you know, financial activity. And so I think that was a moment where, and I've since been, you know, I love the in-feed mints. I mint a lot of stuff that I see in the feed, and I think that you know, I have a channel called Skin in the Game, and
we love that channel. We're big fans.
NFT.
Thank you. That's cool. And you know, it means a few things, but I think to me the big differentiator from Warpcast and Twitter is that Warpcast actually is empowering and gives people more skin in the game. So on Twitter, I think the vast majority of users, most people in the world, are kind of passively observing, right? They're kind of consuming content. They're not actually active and in the game doing. And I think what Warpcast enables is people to have skin in the game and actually be active in minting, in creating their own mints, in creating channels, and a whole bunch of stuff that's going to come soon. So having skin in the game to me is the and giving more people skin in the game is the big thing that differentiates Warpcast from Twitter. And to answer your initial question, I think so. It's all that stuff that excites me. Whether it's it's being able to mint, to create mints, to own coins that are represent kind of ownership and engagement in a channel. All that stuff, I think, is the interesting stuff that's really kind of catapulted Farcaster to the next level.
What's interesting about what you're saying is there's this set of numbers that gets tossed around that it's like 90. It's like
I know this one. 1% of people on social networks are creating content. 9% are engaging with that content, and the other 90% are like passively scrolling, lurking, etc.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting is that, like, if you think about that 90%, it's like an untapped market, because the only call to action, the only thing that you can do is to engage or create. But if only 10% of the people on the network are going to do that, well, what does the other 90% do? And what you're describing is like, well, frame transactions, mint with warps, channel economic tools. There's like this really rich set of new actions that 90% users can now take.
Yep.
So it's like Farcaster, Warpcast, they're sort of tapping in and like leveraging that latent potential in a way that no other network is.
100%.
I really like that. That's like a new thought I haven't heard before.
Really? It's look at a lot of the frame. So out of like all of the frames that I put out, some of the, I think I have like one transactional one. All the other ones are like content, like more social, like not as interesting. But you look at the number of people who've interacted with the frame and clicked through and done multiple different things, played the game. It's so much more than what the actual number of likes or replies is. And it's on par with the number of views. Mm-hmm. I think it could be really interesting that you could actually, like, based on the number of views and based on the number of frame transactions, you can figure out like how many more people are now like actively engaging with content pre and post frame.
Yeah. What I know you've done some token gated kind of frames as well, right?
Yeah.
I've done a couple. What's the one you're kind of most excited about?
In terms of token gated frames?
Yeah.
That's interesting. So the ones that I actually think I'm most excited about are the ones that get you access to an experience. And like, only because I think like token gated content isn't that exciting. It's like, oh, how does this like add to a lead up of an experience? So I just did one that was like a token gated event where like you could only see all of the event details if you had the token, and you could only like it was a poker game. So like you could only buy into the poker game if you had the token. And so like that to me is like more interesting. I did a token gated, I did a token gated pitch, like where only the people who I wanted to see the pitch could see it. And they're like, oh, that was like really clever. Good job. So like stuff like that like is joy and delight. But other than that, I'm like, I don't know what I'm still TBD on like what if a token gated, like the experience, it has to be an experience for me to be excited about like the token gated frame. So it would have to be like some sort of like multi-level game. I don't know. I'll think about it.
Okay. So there's just, we'll go into degen, but I just want to make one more comment kind of on what you said, because I really like that idea about sort of tapping into this potential that's 90%. And like the powerful thing about frames is that tapping into that potential is now no longer contingent just on what Warpcast ships, but now they can they get the benefit of the developer community.
Yep.
So now it's not just, oh, look at now you have this 90% of users that would typically just be lurking. Now they can take actions. What's even more that's exciting in of itself. What's even more exciting is that those actions that they can now take are not just like what Workcast decides.
Yeah.
Like we did, we have a hyper subframe and people can mint subscriptions now directly from the frame. We didn't have to, that wasn't really a permissioned thing.
Yeah.
They plugged into our contracts, done. That now adds to this expanding set of things that users can do. The Girl Scout cookies one, like ordering merch. So I think like that sort of feels like rocket boosters, like on the growth of the network.
100%.
Speaking of kind of permissionless innovation, let's get into degen, because I think that is a good example of a channel that made its own economic tool, that had, a really smart and, capable, charismatic founder who's now like finding all kinds of ways for that to get into other Farcaster clients. You guys took a very big position in it. So I want to hear the thesis, like, what's your view? What convinced you that there was something special here? Where do you see it going? What excites you about it?
Well, I think, our thesis, which is we invest in products that we like. It's kind of as simple as that.
Great thesis. More people need to do that, I think.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, basically we liked the product, we liked JSIC, and that's, that was as simple as that. I mean, what specifically we liked, I think when I saw the channel, it started just as a channel and then kind of an airdrop to channel members. To me, that's just a great way to launch a token community. And I kind of felt that that was going to become a big meta. And I think if you can be the kind of authentic, first of its kind project to basically catalyze a new meta in crypto, then that can be a very valuable thing. So that was kind of outside of just kind of liking it, that was maybe the thought is like, I think we could see a huge meta with, token communities launching first as channels where people are engaging about, topics that they're interested in, and then later, add a token. I just really like that as as a way to launch a new, token community. And I think we're still probably pretty early in this meta, right? I mean, degen's been around for 4 months?
I know it feels like a year, and it's like brand new, basically.
Yeah.
Well, he's so good at innovating, and I think I don't know. I have like my own kind of thesis on like meme coins, but I don't necessarily think degen is a meme coin, because he literally was like, no, we're going to airdrop it based on a lot of different things that have already happened on Farcaster, like on the off-chain and the on-chain data. And what I think is so unique about it is that it's, and I think this about a lot of meme coins, is like top down versus bottom up, is that as soon as it launched, like you saw these characters take it on as like their identity, or like Farcaster OGs. And then like new people also started getting involved because they felt like this was their community. And like now they're part of something larger than themselves. And I don't know. Again, as you say, like we're really early in the meta, and you've seen like definitely a shift. And it definitely served as a catalyst for all these other Farcaster native like meme coins, like separate from everything we're seeing on Solana. But I'm almost like, okay, we have to see if like, did he just do this in a really unique way and successfully implement it and then scale it? Or is this the new growth playbook across the board? And I think some people are conflating the two, but I think what degen is like incredibly, incredibly unique. And like, think about Dracula, think about Bracket Game, think about now Pearl is using it. Like everyone's using it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
One of the things, what makes me like products is if I can see them bringing in new users and keeping new users in crypto. It's like that's kind of what motivates me. What I care about is like, I want the whole world to be able to benefit from crypto. And there was a product called Steemit. It was its own blockchain back in maybe 2016, 2017. Do you guys know about Steemit?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Okay. I remember it.
Yeah. So Steemit, it had kind of, its moment in the sun. It was very hot for, maybe 6 months or something, and it didn't end up working. But it was basically kind of a decentralized Reddit where you make posts and there was a native token, and tokens were rewarded to users based on upvotes. And so a new user could come in and post a great piece of content, and if they got a bunch of upvotes, they could make money. And that, the ability to give new users tokens for contributing, I think is a great way to onboard new people in crypto, right? So Steemit didn't work because of the token distribution mechanism. Basically, the money made or earned was it was weighted based on how many tokens you already had.
Oh.
So basically, the kind of early, and there was also it was a token that could be mined. So there were a few kind of weird things about it, but basically, my view on why it didn't work is the people that were curating on Steemit, they weren't good curators. So they basically, if you got an upvote from like one of the founders, you made thousands of dollars, but the founders didn't really,
use discretion.
And understand what was good content. So it was. I thought it was a very cool idea that didn't work in practice because the way that new tokens were rewarded to new users basically didn't work. And when I saw Degen, what I liked is this the way that in the different seasons that the token distribution is allocated based on engagement metrics. So you have I don't know what it is now, but at one point Vitalik had the highest engagement per cast, and so he had the highest tip allocation, which fundamentally I think it makes a lot more sense than the way Steemit did it. So that was kind of having that context of there was cool things about Steemit that might have worked, but there, and then now this comes along and it's new and I think better. That was another reason that to me, when we saw Degen, we talked to Jason very quick. It was it was a no brainer.
Yeah, that's how I felt. Well, I mean, I don't know if you know the context, but at first, sometimes I'm like a stickler and I want the old kind of really interesting conversations. And so when Degen first came out, it was at the same time as permissionless channels. And my entire feed was Degen. And I was I can't look at Warpcast anymore. So I just quit and left it, deleted it from my phone.
Really?
And then it was I became a meme. Dan was Farcaster boycott person.
For how long?
I lasted 3 days, 4 days. It was painfully embarrassing. But then I was okay, I actually want to learn what this is. And so I did a quick call with him too and was wait, this is actually brilliant. I see what you're doing. And of course there's going to be bad actors or spammy people. But at the end of the day, the number of people who are involved who I'm these are really interesting, high quality people who then want to build, it's incentivized a whole new Merkle team isn't incentivizing builders, right? They're focused on their own thing. And now with Degen, I've seen more projects pop up because they're oh, we can get a Degen grant and I can build this app, I can build this new frame game. It's been really good for the ecosystem. It's I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I'm always skeptical of these a lot of the coins Solana, or a lot of these projects have foundations where they give developers a bunch of money to build on their thing, and very rarely does do these. And it's the same is true for a company that has a dedicated venture capital fund to give money to builders on the the Facebook fund or Slack fund or whatever. These things never really work. It's interesting because Degen, this fund, it's essentially a similar idea, but I think because it's early and there's so many engaged users, it's actually giving incentives for developers is actually moving the needle and leading and working. Again, it's still very early, but leading to a lot of engagement for these new apps like Dracula and others.
Well, what's an important difference in these two situations you've described is that, it's Degen is not from Warpcast. Mm-hmm. It was its own bottom-up emergent property of the network, and I think like it's not contingent on like Dan and Varun kind of like blessing an investor or a builder with a specific grant. Like it's kind of people just doing it themselves.
Well, but it still is. I mean, JSIC is effectively
But what I'm saying is like JSIC is his own entity. Like it's his own project, and there's a lot of people that have skin in that game. So it's not like apply to the Farcaster grant program or whatever. I mean, actually, the Nouns retroactive grants are another good example of kind of a spontaneous system of incentivizing and rewarding builders that just emerged.
But I don't know how I feel about Nouns, because
I can't believe you left for 3 days. I gotta look up. Is there some good content on that?
Oh yeah, there's plenty.
I got like even Dan, like then I remember I like DM'd Dan once, and I was like on Twitter, and I was like, I had to be like, Dan, this is so hard, and he was like, haha, you deserve it. Like that was it.
And I was like, being like, I think we probably would have gotten channel muting quite a bit sooner had you not done that, because they, out of spite, you were basically like,
I screwed myself. I played myself. I played everyone.
And they're like, you said, until they implement channel muting, I'm gone. I'm out of here. And so then you came back 3 days later, and I don't know if I don't think there's channel muting. They still haven't done it.
There's not.
So there probably would have been sooner.
Yeah. Do you see yourself rage quitting again?
No, I learned my lesson. I definitely learned my lesson. Huh?
Are you guarantee that?
I will guarantee it.
Okay.
Even said it. I said there's been a couple things where like product decisions, like when the feed started to get pretty bad or like it felt spammy. I guess my question was like, oh, are we going like full degen? Like, are we leaning as a product like into like not degen, the actual degen token, but like full kind of like crypto Twitter, or like what's going to happen? And I was like, just let me know so I can like mentally prepare myself, because I can't quit again. So I just like need to be mentally prepared. And then it was like left on red. But then they cleaned up the spammy. They cleaned up the main feed spam. So that was the answer.
We need to set up a prediction market.
Yeah.
Will Ted boycott again?
I'm really into these social. So I'm really into these social prediction markets now. And Nick, I think you also said like you've always been like curious about prediction markets. And I know like Pearl is one. I just use Sway, and I'm super excited about Sway. And then I'm also doing like a demo with Arena. Sway is just the easiest permissionless one where I could set it up on my own. But yeah, what do you think about like Farcaster and frames and prediction markets?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like I've been obsessed with prediction markets for a long time, and we've invested in a bunch of different projects over the years. And Polymarket is one, outside of the Farcaster ecosystem, although they did a cool brackets frame. But yeah, I think that I've been blown away by kind of new stuff popping up within the Farcaster ecosystem around social, betting, prediction markets, and I think I'm using all these products, and hopefully we're going to invest in some of them, and I think there's going to be a lot of cool stuff to come in that area.
Yeah. Actually, that's like one reason why I love One Confirmation. It goes back to like a lot of the brand thing that you were talking about earlier, where you're not like in your face and like too markety, is that all of a sudden, like I won't know someone is with One Confirmation until all of a sudden I'm like, look in their profile and I'm like, wait, what? Because like, I've just been like, oh, I love this person. It happened recently where I was like, wait, so anyways, I think you're great at that. And I think
so it must have been either Mike or Richard, but
I think it was both, actually.
Okay, nice.
And I was going through Farcon stuff too, and was like, oh, I didn't like put two. I think I found it out from their email. but it's also that you guys like actually are like using everything on chain. Like you can see it. And I'm just like, oh, so many. I think one of the gripes is like, oh, VCs just like, talk and whatever. But I'm like, one thing I love is like, as soon as you built a multi-sig for your channel, immediately I texted Johnny and I was like, I want to do this for my own channel. So
that's been a fun experiment. But yeah, that's kind of been our kind of approach. It was my approach getting into crypto even. It's like I first bought Bitcoin in 2012. And to do that in the US then, you had to go to an ATM, take out cash, then go to a local Walgreens and like MoneyGram it over to some sketchy exchange in Japan.
Yeah.
So that's how I was buying Bitcoin. And then I saw Brian launch Coinbase on Hacker News, and it just solved a very simple problem that I had at the time, which was connect a bank account online and buy Bitcoin. And that kind of, I got excited about Bitcoin, about Coinbase from a user perspective, and kind of hustled my way in the door to join Coinbase. And that's kind of been our approach, and we've stayed focused on it, and it's kind of led to good results. So we're going to continue to do it. It's just what I enjoy. So
I think it's broadly true. Like I think that like all the alpha is in the usage.
Mm-hmm.
Like being an early Farcaster user, we were just using the product. That was it. That's all we were really doing, and like we've benefited massively as a result of that. And I think that's true for the majority of crypto products that actually like have longevity and make it. Is like they reward you kind of in one way or the other.
It's what crypto is all about, right?
Yeah,
giving users ownership.
That's right.
That is the main thing that crypto I think does for the world.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, last thing, and then I think we should wrap this up. But you have this great kind of mental model on purists and tourists and the intersection of those two things. I'd love if you're willing to just share that as kind of a parting message.
Well, first of all, it's not my mental model. I love to use it, but Virgil Abloh is the kind of the originator of the mental model, and he's got some great YouTube videos that I recommend people interested check out where he's talking about it. But I think when I heard it, it really resonated with me, and it was kind of how I was thinking about crypto and how I invest in crypto, without putting everything together. But the basic idea is there's purists who. A purist is a person that's steeped in like historical knowledge on the thing. They know the thing inside and out. And the tourist is the person that doesn't give a shit about all that. They just want to build a product that resonates, or they just want a product that resonates. And the biggest impact from a product perspective, and I think this is very true in crypto, is the intersection of purists and tourists. So you really need to be at the intersection. If you're too purist, then you're too niche, right? So you might have a small, user base or audience or whatever, but you're not going to, break out and really grow. If you're too tourist, then you might be hot for a moment in time, but you're going to come and go. And I think the biggest impact really lies at the intersection of purist and tourist. And the challenge, I think it's a good mental model. I think the challenge is, what you bucket into the tourist, what you bucket into the purist, and also kind of understanding your own approach. Like I think at times I could be a little too purist, and that maybe
me too.
Causes me to miss some things that are actually at the intersection, but I view to be tourist. And it's interesting because I think once or twice I've tweeted out kind of my crypto mental model for what's purist and what's tourist, and I always get like attacked by the people that own the coins of what I'm saying is tourist. So
yeah,
I love that. That's I like I really like that framing a lot, and I think it tracks certainly with my experience as well. Nick, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
Wow,
thank you.
You set a really high standard for all of our other guest podcasts. So
this
thank you.
This is the perfect inaugural.
Is this going to be minted?
Yeah.
You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something.